For 42 years, my husband went to the bank every Monday. I never questioned it, until the day he died. That's when I found a letter that shattered everything I thought I knew about him. The truth about his Monday visits was more dangerous than I could have imagined. But just as I uncovered it, someone walked in, and everything changed. It had all started so innocently. My husband, Robert, and I had built a life together. We raised our children, celebrated milestones, and weathered the ups and downs that life throws at you. He was the kind of man who loved routine. Every Monday, he went to the bank. He never talked about what he did there, and I never asked. Life was busy, and I trusted him. After all, we were partners. I always felt a sense of comfort knowing that we shared everything, or so I thought. There were little things, though, that I noticed over the years. He had an odd quietness about him when he returned from the bank. He would always go straight to the study, his face a little more serious than when he had left. But he would never tell me anything about his trip. "Just business, dear," he'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And that was it. We never spoke about it again. I remember one particular Monday, about 6 months ago. Robert had come home looking unusually troubled. His tie was slightly askew, and his hair, usually neatly combed, was a little disheveled. I asked if everything was okay, but he simply nodded and walked away. I didn't press the matter. Perhaps he had had a rough day, I thought. But after he passed away, those little moments started to weigh on me. They became like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't been able to put together until now. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Robert had been hiding something. Something important. And that letter, it was the key to unraveling everything. As I held that letter in my trembling hands, I couldn't help but wonder, had I been so caught up in the routine of life that I missed all the signs? Had I truly known the man I had spent so many years with? What was this secret, and why was it so carefully hidden? I needed answers, and I was determined to get them. But first, I had to figure out what I had just read in that letter. As I read it again, my eyes locked onto the final line. It was a sentence that froze me to my core: "The bank holds the key to everything." What did that mean? Why had he never told me? And who was this mysterious person mentioned in the letter? I had so many questions, and no answers in sight. But one thing was clear: I needed to find out the truth. But little did I know, the truth was far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I decided to go to the bank. It was time to uncover the secret my husband had been hiding for all those years. But when I arrived, I was met with a shocking surprise that made my blood run cold. They knew who I was. And they were waiting for me. As I stood there, my hand on the door, I could feel the weight of the moment. What was waiting for me inside? What had Robert been involved in? And why did I feel like I was stepping into a trap? The answers were so close, but they also felt like they could destroy everything I had ever known. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. As soon as I stepped through the door of the bank, a chill ran down my spine. It felt like stepping into a world that had been hidden from me for years. The walls, the polished floors, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, everything felt the same, yet somehow, it wasn't. I wasn't sure what I expected, but certainly not this. The receptionist, a young woman with dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail, looked up at me as I approached. There was something in her eyes, recognition. Perhaps, or maybe just curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice professional, but there was a slight hesitation, a flicker of something in her expression that made me feel like I wasn't entirely welcome. "I'm here to inquire about something," I said, my voice trembling just slightly. "I need to speak with someone who can help me with my husband's accounts." I forced myself to sound confident, though my heart was pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was even asking for, but I knew I had to start somewhere. The receptionist gave me a polite smile, but I could tell there was something she wasn't saying. "Please wait a moment, Mrs. Harper," she said, her fingers quickly tapping on the keyboard as she typed in my husband's name. "I'll have someone with you shortly." I nodded and sat down in the waiting area, my eyes scanning the room, trying to calm my nerves. The sleek, modern interior of the bank only made me feel more out of place. Everything here seemed so polished and professional, and yet I felt as if I was about to shatter the image of perfection that Robert had built over the years. It wasn't long before a man in a suit appeared. He was tall, with dark eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me on edge. He introduced himself as Mr. Lawson, and I felt a strange sense of recognition, as if I had seen him somewhere before, though I couldn't place where. "Mrs. Harper," he began, extending his hand, "I'm the manager here. I understand you're looking into your husband's accounts." I nodded, gripping his hand tightly, trying not to show how much my mind was racing. "Yes," I said. "I need to know more about his visits here. He's been coming every Monday for 42 years, and I've just discovered something about it. I need to understand what's been going on." Mr. Lawson's eyes narrowed slightly, and I noticed a flicker of something, concern, maybe, in his gaze. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "Mrs. Harper," he said softly, "perhaps we should discuss this in private." He led me into a small office at the back of the bank. As we entered, I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on me. The office was modest but well kept, with a desk, a few chairs, and a large window that overlooked the street outside. Mr. Lawson gestured for me to sit. "Please, have a seat," he said, his voice calm but firm. "What exactly is it that you're looking for?" I hesitated. The letter I had found at home weighed heavily in my pocket, and I wasn't sure how much I should reveal yet. But I had to start somewhere. I took a deep breath and decided to speak the truth. "My husband," I began, "was coming here every Monday. For 42 years. And I've just discovered that he was keeping something from me, something involving this bank. I don't know what, but there's a letter. It mentions something about a key. A key to something, and I need to know what it is." Mr. Lawson's expression didn't change, but I could see a slight tension in his jaw. He reached for a folder on his desk, flipping it open. "I see," he said slowly. "It's possible there's been some misunderstanding, but I can assure you, your husband's accounts are in order. However, there are things we cannot disclose to just anyone. There are certain privacy policies in place." I felt my pulse quicken. "I'm not asking for his personal financial details," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just need to know why he came here every week. What was so important that he kept it from me?" Mr. Lawson's eyes flicked to the window for a moment, and then back to me. He paused again, as if considering whether or not to say something. Finally, he spoke. "I'm afraid, Mrs. Harper, that the nature of your husband's dealings here may be more complicated than you realize." My heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? More complicated? What was he hiding? He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I think it would be best if you spoke to someone else," he said. "I'll arrange for you to meet with someone who might be able to help you understand things more clearly." Before I could respond, the door opened behind me. Mr. Lawson's assistant stood in the doorway, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Mr. Lawson, there's someone here to see you," the assistant said, glancing at me before quickly looking away. Mr. Lawson stood up. "Excuse me, Mrs. Harper," he said, his tone suddenly colder. "Please wait here. I'll be right back." He left the room, and I was left sitting there, my thoughts racing. Who could be here to see him? What was going on? I glanced around the room, my mind unable to settle. I had so many questions, but no answers. What was my husband involved in? And why had he been so secretive? As I sat there, my anxiety building, I heard a voice coming from the hallway. It was low, hushed, but unmistakable. And it sent a wave of dread through me. "Mrs. Harper doesn't know anything yet," the voice said. It was a man's voice, but I couldn't make out who it was. "We need to keep it that way. For now." My breath caught in my throat. Who were these people? And why was my husband's past so much darker than I could have ever imagined? Just as I was about to stand up and leave the room, the door opened again. Mr. Lawson stepped inside, his face pale, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "We need to talk," he said. And in that moment, I realized that whatever was coming next, I wasn't prepared for it. Mr. Lawson shut the door behind him, his face tight with concern. He didn't immediately sit down, instead standing across from me with his hands clasped in front of him. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, like something was about to break, something big. "Mrs. Harper," he began, his voice steady but strained, "I'm afraid the situation is far more complicated than you realize. Your husband wasn't just a regular customer here. His visits, they weren't about simple banking." My stomach twisted. I had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it spoken out loud was different. My mind raced, trying to process the gravity of his words. "Then what was it about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why did he come here every week for 42 years? What was so important that he couldn't tell me?" Mr. Lawson took a deep breath, clearly choosing his words carefully. He sat down across from me, his eyes never leaving mine. "I can't disclose all the details. It's a matter of confidentiality," he said. "But I can tell you that your husband was involved in a series of transactions that were irregular." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "Irregular," I repeated. "What kind of transactions?" He paused for a moment, as if considering whether he should say more. "I'm going to tell you something, but I must warn you, it's not going to be easy to hear. Your husband was part of a covert arrangement, something far bigger than just a few personal financial dealings." I could feel the blood drain from my face. My mind screamed at me to ask more questions, but I didn't know where to start. "Covert," I managed to say. "What kind of arrangement? What was he involved in?" "There are people, very powerful people, who don't want this information getting out. And the more you dig, the more dangerous it becomes. Your husband wasn't just an ordinary man, he had connections, ties to organizations that were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their interests. He was their middleman, their go-between." I could feel the weight of his words sink in like a stone in my chest. "So all these years, he was lying to me?" I asked, the pain in my voice unmistakable. "What was he doing behind my back? Why didn't he tell me any of this?" Mr. Lawson's gaze softened, though his eyes still held a hint of wariness. "It's not that simple," he said quietly. "He didn't tell you because he wanted to protect you. He didn't want you involved in this mess." He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. "But the truth is, he was in too deep. And now that he's gone, the people he was working with may be looking for something, or someone." The word sent a chill through me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What are they looking for?" Mr. Lawson hesitated, then sighed deeply, as if he knew he couldn't keep things from me any longer. "Your husband had something, a key. A key to a safe deposit box here at the bank. But it wasn't just any box. It was a box filled with documents and items that could destroy lives." My mind reeled. A key. A box. What was he talking about? "Where is the key?" I asked urgently. "Where is it now?" Mr. Lawson looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "That's where things get tricky. The key was never found." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, never found?" I demanded. "Where is it? It must be somewhere." "I don't know," he said, his voice tight. "But there are people who believe you have it. And they're willing to do anything to get it." I stared at him, struggling to process the flood of information. "Why would they think I have it? I don't even know what this key is for. I don't know anything about any of this." "I know you don't," he said quickly. "But your husband left something for you. He knew this day would come. He left instructions on how to find it, if you were ever in danger." I felt a chill grip me, as though the walls were closing in. "Instructions? What instructions?" "I can't tell you everything. But there's a place, a location where you can find the answers you're looking for. Your husband's last request to you was to go there. But be warned, there are people watching you. They know you're here. They know you're looking for the key." I felt dizzy, like the room was spinning around me. My husband had kept all of this from me, an entire life hidden behind a veil of secrecy. And now, as I sat in this bank office, my world was unraveling. The safe deposit box, the key, the danger, it all felt too much. "Where do I go?" I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Where do I find this place?" Mr. Lawson stood up, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "I'll give you the address," he said. "But you need to go alone." Do not trust anyone, not even me. I felt my throat tighten. What do you mean? Why can't I trust you? He gave me a hard look, his eyes cold and distant now. Because I'm not the only one involved in this. And if you tell anyone, the danger will follow you. You'll be putting yourself and those you care about at risk. My mind was spinning as he scribbled something on a piece of paper and handed it to me. The address was written in neat, block letters, but it felt like a time bomb ticking in my hands. Go there, he said, his voice low. But don't wait too long. If you do, it will be too late. I glanced at the piece of paper, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. What was waiting for me at this mysterious location? What had my husband been hiding for all these years? Before I could ask another question, Mr. Lawson was gone, leaving me alone in the office, holding the address in my trembling hand. The moment I stepped out of the office, I knew my life would never be the same. The people involved in this dark secret were out there, and they were watching my every move. But I didn't have a choice. I had to go. I had to find the key. The address Mr. Lawson gave me was in a part of town I wasn't familiar with. The area felt wrong from the moment I stepped out of the taxi. The streets were dimly lit, and the buildings around me looked old and abandoned, as if time had forgotten them. A chill ran through me as I clutched the piece of paper tightly in my hand, as if the address itself might slip away and disappear if I wasn't careful. I glanced around, feeling a growing sense of unease. The quiet was oppressive, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. What had I gotten myself into? Why had Robert hidden all of this from me? And what was waiting for me at this address? I turned the corner and saw the building he'd mentioned. It was a nondescript brick structure, weathered by years of neglect. A small, rusty sign hanging above the entrance barely read, "Storage Facility." It looked more like a place to stash old furniture than anything remotely connected to my husband's secret life. My heart thudded in my chest as I walked closer. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if my feet were sinking into the ground. I reached the door and paused for a moment. Should I knock? Should I just walk in? My hand trembled as I reached for the handle, and I pushed the door open slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old wood. The dim light barely illuminated the rows of shelves stacked high with boxes, filing cabinets, and forgotten odds and ends. I could hear the faint sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, the only sign of life in this lonely, desolate place. I stepped inside, my shoes echoing in the silence. The door creaked shut behind me, and I jumped slightly, startled by the sound. My mind raced as I looked around, searching for any clue, any sign that I was in the right place. Then, I saw it. At the far end of the room, tucked away behind a stack of cardboard boxes, was a small door. It looked out of place in the middle of all the clutter, almost as if it didn't belong here. I felt a strange pull toward it, as if something invisible was guiding me toward it. Without thinking, I walked toward it, my heart pounding in my ears. When I reached the door, I noticed a faint scratch on the wood. It was a subtle mark, barely noticeable, but something about it made my blood run cold. This wasn't just any door, it was the door Robert had left behind. This was the place he wanted me to find. I took a deep breath and turned the handle. The door opened with a quiet squeak, revealing a small, dimly lit room beyond. Inside, there were shelves filled with old files and boxes, but nothing that immediately caught my attention. I stepped inside cautiously, scanning the room. My eyes landed on a small desk in the corner, and on top of it, there was an old, dusty safe. I froze. The safe. This had to be it. The key Robert had hidden. The key that everyone had been searching for. The key to whatever secret my husband had buried so deep that I hadn't even known it existed. But as I approached the safe, something caught my eye. On the wall beside it was a framed photograph. It was a picture of Robert, except this wasn't the Robert the first had known. In the photo, he stood beside a group of men, all wearing suits, their expressions serious. But it was the man standing next to Robert that made my breath catch. He looked familiar. Too familiar. It was the same man I had seen in the bank, the one whose voice I had overheard. The one who had spoken about not letting me find out too much. I backed away from the photo, my heart racing. Had Robert been involved with these people? Was he part of something much darker than I had ever imagined? I turned my attention back to the safe, my hands trembling as I reached for the combination dial. The key had to be inside. But as I touched the safe, I heard a sound, a quiet click, followed by the faintest shuffle of footsteps behind me. Someone was here. My body tensed as I spun around, expecting to see a shadow, or perhaps the figure of someone lurking in the doorway. But there was nothing. The room was empty, yet the air felt thick with an unseen presence, and my skin prickled with the sensation that I wasn't alone. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and the urgency to open the safe became overwhelming. I had to find out what was inside, what my husband had been protecting. But I couldn't shake the fear that whoever had been following me was closer than I realized. I quickly returned to the safe, my hands shaking as I spun the dial. The combination clicked into place, and the heavy door of the safe creaked open. Inside, there were several files and folders, but no key. My heart sank. I dug through the contents quickly, my desperation growing with every second. Then, I found it, tucked beneath a folder labeled "Important." A small, tarnished key. It was the key I had been looking for. But just as my fingers closed around it, I heard the door behind me open. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to see a figure standing in the doorway. It was him, the man from the bank. "Don't move," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The man in the doorway stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto the key I was holding in my trembling hand. I felt the cold metal in my palm, but it was as though it had become weightless, my whole body frozen in place. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as he moved closer, each step echoing in the stillness of the room. "You shouldn't have come here, Mrs. Harper," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with authority. The words sent a wave of dread through me. This man, who was he? What did he want with the key? And why had Robert kept this secret for so long? I stood up slowly, trying to keep my composure, but I could feel the panic rising in my throat. "What is this about?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to remain strong. "Why are you following me? Why was my husband involved with you?" The man didn't answer at first. He just watched me with a calculating gaze, his jaw clenched tight as if deciding whether or not to speak the truth. The silence stretched out between us like a thick rope, pulling tighter with each passing second. Finally, he spoke. "Your husband was a part of something bigger than you could ever imagine," he said, his voice now tinged with a hint of regret. "He wasn't just a banker. He was working with people who had the power to control entire networks, whole industries, and even governments. The key you're holding, Mrs. Harper, it's the key to something that could change everything." I took a step back, the weight of his words sinking in. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my mind reeling. "What could possibly be so important?" "Your husband was protecting you," he replied, his tone softening, almost as if he were trying to justify Robert's actions. "But now that you're here, there's no turning back. People want that key, and they'll stop at nothing to get it. That's why Robert tried to keep you safe from all of this. But it's too late now." I gripped the key tighter, my knuckles white from the pressure. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with a quiet rage. "What do you want from me?" He stepped closer, his hand outstretched. "Give me the key, Mrs. Harper, and I can promise you that you'll be left alone. No one will come after you, and you can walk away from all of this. But if you refuse, if you keep digging, they'll come for you. And they won't stop until they get what they want." The air in the room felt suffocating. I could feel the weight of his words pressing on my chest, the fear creeping up my spine. The man wasn't lying, I could see it in his eyes. But I couldn't just hand over the key, not when it was the only thing that connected me to the truth. My whole life had been built on trust, and now, everything I thought I knew was in question. Was I really going to give up without knowing what my husband had been involved in? "No," I said, my voice barely audible at first, but growing louder with conviction. "I'm not giving it to you. I need to know the truth. I need to understand why Robert did this, what he was hiding from me." The man's face darkened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something dangerous behind his eyes. He took another step forward, his hand still outstretched, but this time, there was no hint of persuasion in his demeanor. It was a command. "You don't have a choice," he said coldly. "You're already in too deep." I stood there, frozen, the key still in my hand, my pulse racing. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing tighter and tighter. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline as the reality of the situation hit me all at once. This was it. This was the moment where everything would change. In that split second, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. I wasn't going to hand over the key, not when I knew the answers to my husband's secrets lay just beyond my reach. But I had to get out of here first. With a sudden burst of energy, I turned and ran. The man shouted behind me, but I didn't stop. My heart pounded in my chest as I dashed out of the room, the key still gripped tightly in my hand. I sprinted down the hallway, hearing the sound of footsteps behind me, the pursuit growing closer with every second. I couldn't stop now. I couldn't let them catch me. I had to find the truth, even if it meant running from the very people who had been watching me all this time. The danger was real, and it was closing in on me, but I couldn't give up. Not now. I burst through the back exit of the storage facility, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap. I didn't look back as I ran through the darkened streets, not sure where I was going, only knowing that I couldn't let them get to me. The key was my only connection to the answers I needed, and I would protect it with my life. As I rounded a corner, my breath coming in ragged gasps, I saw a car in the distance, a dark sedan parked on the side of the road. My pulse quickened as I recognized the figure inside. It was him, the man from the bank. He was waiting for me. I had two choices. I could run, or I could face him. I paused for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wasn't sure if I could outrun him, but I couldn't back down now. Not after everything that had happened. The man stepped out of the car, his eyes fixed on me. He had a look of determination in his gaze, but there was something else there too. It wasn't just about the key. It was about power, about control. I had the key, but I was about to find out just how far people would go to take it from me.